Kia ora, everyone, and welcome back to Stripped and Unscripted. I'm Vixen Temple.
And I am Madeline Rose.
And we hope you enjoyed last week's corridor around online censorship. So the topic of today's podcast kind of ties into that. I mentioned in the last episode about how online censorship is essentially filtering out marginalized voices and amplifying the voices of fucking bigots. And so today's episode kind of ties into that. I saw a tweet that I strongly agree with, and I want to read it out I'm going to read it out now, and then Madeline and I are just going to share our thoughts on it. This might be somewhat of a confronting corridor, but that's what we're here for. So I'm going to read the tweet. It says, quote, I honestly hate that we've normalized the idea that all opinions are valid. I think we should get back to telling people that they are ill-informed and ignorant, end quote. So, Madeline, let's hear your thoughts, and then we'll just go from there. Sorry, I'm laughing just because, it's so fucking real.
I could not agree more. It is so frustrating when people will say really bigoted, hateful, incorrect things and brush off any, pushback by being like, well, it's my opinion, in my opinion, in my opinion. Honestly, in terms of our topic that we speak on, our, stuff around sex work that we advocate for, I actually, and this is might also be a confronting thing to say, I actually don't give a single shit about your opinion if you're not a sex worker. And I don't actually think that as a non-sex worker entering a conversation about sex workers, and I think it would be the same for other marginalized communities, people who aren't a part of those communities entering conversations about those communities, you actually can't really have an opinion because you don't have lived experience. And you can have thoughts and you can ask questions and you can, check in with people from those communities about whether your thoughts are actually well informed or accurate. But I don't think you get to just say, well, my opinion on it is yada yada yada, because I think the word opinion kind of is synonymous with saying that you think that's fact. And so often opinions are just so not fact. It's just your own thoughts that you've had in your brain. Does that make sense?
No, I completely fucking agree with everything you said. I also am someone that I don't give a fuck about your opinion on anything S-work related if you're not an S-worker yourself, because as Madeline said, I think the issue is a lot of people get the word that they think their opinion is fact, like you said. And my issue with that is that our opinions are really shaped and influenced by our cultural backgrounds, our family beliefs, our values, all of those things. Yeah, opinions are not facts. They're opinions that have been influenced by so many things around us. An example in my head that I can think of to try give an example of why I think this thing is so dangerous is J.K. Rowling. Such a loud woman who's of the opinion, her opinion is that trans women are men dressed as women. And that opinion that she has manifested into something so insidious that it is violently impacting the lives of trans women. All because this fucking woman has the opinion that she thinks is fact, and she's now spewing that hatred on the internet, influencing other people to think that it's fact. And it's fucking dangerous. When your opinion is not informed by facts, that's really dangerous. I think it's that really cool quote that I read once. It's normalize changing your opinion when presented with new facts. On the post this tweet that was shared to Instagram, there was a comment where someone said, it's sort of similar to the conversation that you have where, your feelings are valid, but that doesn't mean you're entitled to respond to them in the way that, and I've had to learn this through a lot of therapy. I'm quite someone who's quite driven by my emotions. and I've had to over the years learn emotional regulation skills. It's emotional regulation skills I think could really be applied to opinion regulation skills, where some people's opinions are not grounded in any sense of reality. They're just like this tweet said, they're just ill-informed and ignorant. You sound fucking stupid, J.K. Rowling, when you say that trans women are men dressed as women. That's a wrong opinion, and that's an opinion that has caused a lot of fucking harm. The same way that when swerves preach, oh, I'm of the opinion that sex work is anti-feminist and exploitative and bad, those opinions negatively impact us sex workers who are just trying to pay our bills and earn a living.
Yeah, I find it really, really fascinating, the whole opinion thing, when people from marginalized communities or like groups from marginalized communities will bring up harm. And me and Vixen, and I think a lot of other people in Aotearoa, as well as people overseas, have a lot of experience with this when there is kind of like a gentle call out made or just any kind of call out. Quite often people will like sort of justify their behaviors or their harmful behaviors or whatever it is by being like, well, in my opinion, XYZ actually is amazing and XYZ is not harmful and XYZ is, it's fine because, and oh man, I just find like if someone's bringing up harm to you, literal harm, and they're saying factual things, this is an issue, this is problematic, you don't get to fall back on your opinion if you're not a part of that community. Like, it's not a cop-out. Your opinion actually doesn't matter. It's like the whole thing of like someone saying to you that you hurt them and you don't get to turn around and say, well, no, I didn't. Because you don't get to decide how someone else feels. And I so often feel like the word opinion is used in that way of being like, well, in my opinion, la 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 la. And that's actually not all good. Like that, a lot of times I feel opinion is used to invalidate people's like real life feelings and harm and trauma and triggers and XYZ. And it shocks me that it's used so often. Like I hear it and I'm thinking, how are you not critically thinking about the fact that your opinion is your opinion, and like Vixen said, it's informed by all of those different things that Vixen said, but also your privilege. And if you have inherently more privilege than someone else, your opinion is therefore way more privileged than the person who you've harmed. And so you probably actually should just sit back and check that for a second and be like, oh no, I actually come from a really different standpoint here. And so like my experiences, which form my, in quotation marks, opinion, are very different. And therefore maybe I should listen.
I'm just reading some of the comments on the Instagram post of this tweet, and this summarized it perfectly. Someone commented, I like to say, your opinion is only as valid as the strength of your evidence. I think that's fucking powerful. Because I think as activists, the thing about activism is that in some ways it is you really like being quite strong and firm in your opinions, but you need to make sure that those opinions are supported by evidence. So like, for example, like I've mentioned before, I have a degree in film and media studies. So while at university, I had to write a lot of essays, and a lot of, when you're doing like a Bachelor of Arts in Film and Media, there's room for like, you've got to put facts in to support your opinions, but a lot of the essays I write are really like shaped by opinions. And I've been taught to like bring in facts to support those opinions. Otherwise you'll be marked down. And I think that's a skill that I'm really grateful for learning, because as an activist, the amount of times I will express something like a fact, and yeah, as Madeline said, people come at you with like, well, my opinion is this. Like, there's this fucking comment here that says, I hate that racism is a matter of opinion. That's something that is just so spewed in our world. Or like, well, it's just my opinion, so like, whatever, I don't want to hear it. And people just shut them the fuck down. It pisses me off so much how much the right to an opinion is weaponized against marginalized communities. As Madeline said at the start, like, I don't care about civilians' thoughts on how pole has positively or negatively impacted S workers because you're not the one at the receiving end of that positive or negative impact. But there are other situations I'm in where I don't think my opinion is valid because it doesn't impact me. Or something I love saying, we need to normalize saying, like, I'm not informed enough on this topic to have an opinion on it yet. And so it's
Period.
actually, right? It's actually okay to say, I don't know enough. I don't have an opinion on this. I'm someone that when I feel very passionately about something, I educate myself on it so that I can have a very strong opinion, and I will always change that opinion if presented with new facts. But I think it's a part of my autism and my autistic brain. I don't always need to be right in this in like an arrogant sense. I just like to be informed. I don't want to be spouting bullshit. I want to make sure, especially because I'm someone with somewhat of a platform, I really see that as quite a big responsibility that I need to make sure that any opinion I am putting out there into people's subconscious needs to be informed by facts. And if I can't back that up by facts or lived experience, I think that's really fucking dangerous. I think that's really fucking dangerous.
I have like an in-person experience with, at the time, like a pretty prominent member of the pole dancing community. Right when I had just started teaching at one of the bigger chains in New Zealand, so I was really, really pursuing pole dancing. Um, it was right before like, or entries had opened to like a really big pole comp in New Zealand, and because people didn't really know me that well yet in the studios, people were like pestering me to enter. Like, I got sent the entries like 16 or something times. People really wanted me to enter. I'm not a comp girly. I don't think I probably ever will compete. And I was expressing to this person why exactly I don't feel comfortable competing. And I was kind of touching on more how I don't really feel comfortable being backstage with a bunch of civilians, pole-fit civilians, most of which I probably wouldn't know, um, and competing over who can be the best pole dancer. Like, I have so many big feelings on it. I don't feel like that's a space for me. I don't feel like that's a safe space for me. Not because I think everyone will be horrible to me, but just because I just don't think that is going to be good for me. And I was sort of explaining that and, some of my more complex feelings around some people in the pole industry who do compete a lot, who are like very swerfy, very, very blatantly cosplay appropriation, shitty behavior. I don't want to be backstage with people like that. So I was explaining this, and she kind of stopped me and she was like, I just have the opinion, and she used the word opinion to start off. She's like, it's my opinion. And like, I find it really horrible that like some people really perpetuate this divide that like doesn't exist. Like, she was kind of like condescending to me, trying to tell me that in that very like motherly way that is so fucking patronizing, like that there is no divide between sex workers and pole-fit civilians, and that I should stop perpetuating the divide because it's always apparently strippers that win these competitions, and most of the people that compete are strippers and yada yada, which I know to be so fucking not true. And I just had to sit there and like listen to her, and something that she said, and this is another topic I love to talk about because I get questions like this all the time in my Ask Me Anythings. But she was talking about her opinion and, all of that kind of stuff. And she kind of chucked in there. She was like, well, I mean, I was in the strip club for like 2 shifts, and I understand, and I honestly just like ended up working out because I like didn't really like it, but like, as someone who has done stripping and then started to like give me more of her opinion. And I was just sitting there like, what? At the time, I think I'd probably been like doing sex work for like 4 years or something like that. And I'd probably been in the strip club for like 3. And I was just like, interesting that you think that a couple of shifts in the strip club equates to having the same experience as me and holding the same like understanding, which validates your apparent opinion that you're trying to push on me. I find that to be so dangerous. I'm like, I'm sorry, 2 days in the strip club, 2 nights, should I say, actually doesn't like validate your incorrect opinion. Like, I've been in the strip club 3 nights a week for 3 years. That's a very long term, like, job to hold. And it just made me so fucking angry in the moment because I was like, how fucking dare you try to tell me that your opinion is valid and that I should listen to you because you've done 2 nights at the club and you now apparently understand me and, all of this. And that's, I think, is something that I would like to talk about at some point is like what the difference is between having long-term experience in sex work and having like dipped your feet in very, very lightly.
This is something Madeline and I have talked about off the podcast when it comes to public figures and activists and putting your opinion out there so publicly. Like, we don't like the word. I think we were talking about like, is someone qualified enough to speak on an issue? And we both felt some reservation around the word qualified because we felt like it was quite, I think, classist, sort of like implying that people need to have like qualifications that you can only gain through having financial means or something. So Madeline and I came to the decision that we quite like the word, like, are you informed enough to speak on a topic?
What I want to say is, if you are sharing your experiences, telling people your stories, that is valid. If you have stories in the strip club that you lived through, doesn't matter how long you were there for, tell your story, babe. Talk about it, normalize it. I'm all for that. It's when people that aren't as informed start to spout off about what is and isn't either factual or problematic or harmful, impactful, whatever, when they don't actually have like a full concept of like what's like the real root of the issue and a real long-term lived experience in the industry. And what I sort of noticed there is when I have witnessed that happening, what it genuinely is it's not inexperienced, uninformed people speaking on what is offensive. It's uninformed and little experienced people talking on what isn't offensive. And that is what is so fucking frustrating when the rest of us are like highlighting harm, and you will have someone who has like the tiniest little tiny bit of experience in the industry saying, well, actually, I did it, and my opinion is that that is not harmful, and then goes on to enable. And unfortunately, when you have someone who is oppressing you or a community and someone who is not wanting to take accountability, who wants to skirt it, the moment you have someone going, well, bing, 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 I have an experience in that industry, I'm part of that industry, and I believe that this is fine behavior and there's nothing wrong with it, that oppressor is going to grab right onto that. And that is going to be their, like, go past jail free card. Like, that is going to be, like, what they use to be like, yeah, or everything's all good, you know? And so that's more what I have a real issue with. I think it's quite a, like, I remember asking this question on my story a long, long time ago about, like, what was the, like, point of from baby stripper to not baby stripper. And it's so unique. Like, it's so person to person. Yeah, I honestly think it takes a long time, but also depends on your, like, the frequency of your working. But another thing that I wanted to say, when you're trying to dictate other people's feelings, you don't actually get to have an opinion on that. Like, that's a you opinion. So your opinion can't inform me when I'm the person experiencing the harm. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. So, okay, so my father is a textbook narcissist. I'm not using that word lightly. Listen, I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist, but from what I understand about narcissism, like my father is a fucking narcissistic person. I haven't had a relationship with him for about 4 or 5 years because I've learned that narcissistic people, especially like toxic narcissistic people, they weaponize the right to an opinion to dismiss your experience. So the last time I ever spoke to my father was I confronted him about just his abuse and neglect and the way that his behavior has impacted me. And he basically told me, like, I'm wrong, and in his opinion, he's been a really good dad, and he's tried his best and all that. And like, that just it made me so angry that like I went batshit crazy. The cops got called. It was a lot. I won't get into that now, but it was a lot. It was a crazy day. But I find that, yeah, having experience being like having a parent that's a narcissistic person who will say that your feelings aren't valid because it doesn't fit the narrative he has in his head of the situation. And that, I think, was really scary to me. And that's why now I recognize that when I'm just expressing my opinion on things that impact my life and how I navigate the decisions and choices I make based on my feelings around it, because that's how opinions are formed, through your experience and values and opinions. When people say to me, especially people that I perceive as having more privilege than me, no, you're wrong because in my opinion, blah, 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 it reminds me of my father, and it triggers me, and it makes me have to sit there and be like, okay, no, it's okay. Like, I'm safe. It's fine. But another thing I wanted to add to that is, so I've been Vixen Temple for 7 years, and like, I am somewhat of a public figure. I've been interviewed on a lot of things. I, yeah, like, people know me. I have a platform. And as I mentioned earlier, like, I see that as a big responsibility, that I'm quite careful when I navigate things I talk about or things I say, because I want to make sure I'm not spreading harmful rhetoric. But something that's quite funny is that, like, the reason I've gained such a platform is because I was just a bitch that posted her opinions to the internet, and a lot of people resonated with them. And a response I get a lot over the years with my articles and just my stories that I post on Instagram is people saying, like, oh my gosh, you put into words what I've been feeling. I just didn't know how to articulate them. And I think it's quite beautiful when you do share your opinions and you connect with other people. I think that's really, really cool. But as I've mentioned, like, the bigger my platform got, the more I had to realize, like, I really need my opinions to be informed by facts. I am an activist, but I'm also a human being at the end of the day. And sometimes I do have opinions that people might disagree with, but because I have such a large platform, it can make people, it can cause, yeah, people to be like, no, that's wrong, and she's spreading harmful rhetoric. And that's something I try to be so mindful of and so intentional around, especially now that this whole podcast is us fucking just talking about our opinions. It's an unscripted show of us talking about our opinions.
My thoughts while you were talking just then was like, I was literally already thinking about bringing this up at some point because I feel the exact same way. I started off as an advocate. Like, when I started to pipe up online, it was very much, I wouldn't write massive long things, and I would just like take a dig and be like, that's not fucking cool. Don't fucking do that. That's fucking cringe. And I stand by that. Like, I stand by a lot of the things I said. I probably wouldn't like change much of my ideology at all. But as things go on and you gain that platform and you become known for talking on these issues, the paranoia is so fucking real. Like, I am so fucking measured about what I say online, and I know you are too, Vixen. And it is because I know that if I am talking shit out of my ass, someone is going to know that. And I have no interest in spouting bullshit. Like, I will not talk on something unless I know what I'm going to say is factually accurate and true. I have a hard time sharing my opinions, like my personal like thoughts and opinions. I remember a couple of months ago when we were going through this bullshit that we will probably never ever not bring up. Um, I had a very personal story linked to that around like what I talked about in our mental health episode, me having a bit of a nervous breakdown after like a really horrendous experience in communication with these people. That kind of like triggered for me to just like spiral a little bit. There was a lot leading up to it, but it was kind of like the big trigger of stress that like sent me over the edge a little bit. And I was like so quiet on that situation. It happened like probably 10 months before it happened like yeah, like end of last year. And so when the situation happened a couple of months ago, it had been what, like 6 months since that happened, and I had kept my mouth shut because I was so conscious that like it was a personal issue. It was something that happened to me, and I feel so passionate about this advocacy that I do being about everyone and not just myself. I don't want my activism to be selfish and self-serving. It's about the community for me. And so I stayed so quiet on that. If that had been someone else, I probably would have piped up. And this is probably a little bit of like the paranoia, the people pleaser in me still kind of rearing its ugly head, but I shut my mouth. And so when that big situation happened, I was like, holy fucking shit, I've kept my mouth shut on this and I fucking shouldn't have, because this big thing has happened. And I remember you saying to me, Vixen, you were like, I was saying to you, I was like, should I include a little tiny bit about my own personal experience with them and my opinion on them? Like, or do you think I should leave it out and just keep it like all about the community? And you had to remind me, you had to be like, yes, like our activism is community focused and like we want to like be the mouthpiece or like the voice for like a lot of people who maybe don't have the same platform we do, but don't forget that your own experience is still a sex worker experience and it's still legitimate and you still are entitled to an opinion, even though you always want everything to be like so factually accurate and so perfectly like articulated and so like encompassing. Your experience is still valid and shareable, and your opinion here is still a legitimate opinion because you are a part of the community that you're advocating for. And I remember being like, oh, wow. I remember being like, oh shit, yeah, I have been kind of pretending like well, not pretending, but kind of like trying to advocate so hard for everyone else and then like forgetting about my own shit. And it's that like paranoia of like, but again, it comes from a good place. It comes from a place of wanting to be intersectional, inclusive, and not selfish. But I think definitely as advocates experiencing some of the hate that we do experience, it can go over the edge and become the paranoia. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
I love that so much. And it's so funny you talk about that, because everything I said to you in that situation is things that I should also say to myself, and was something that I was sort of learning and navigating at the time too, because I'm the same. Like, as I've gained a bigger platform over the years, I've tried to be really mindful about what I talk on. And yeah, just I don't want to be selfish. But I sometimes have to remind myself, like, but I am a sex worker. Like, I think I get a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, even now, talking about really stripper stuff, because I haven't stripped since 2020. I haven't stripped in the strip clubs, at least, since 2021. I still do bachelorette parties and bachelor parties, and like I do outstrip still, but I haven't worked in the clubs since 2021. And so as the years go on, it's now 2025, I'm like, am I even entitled to have an opinion on anything like stripper related? Like, I'm not working in the clubs right now. I now am a full service sex worker, independent. I do online content. I have a few regular clients that I see face to face. And then in the summertime, I usually get booked for like outstrips, and they're so much fun. I fucking love them. But I often think sometimes I forget that like I am in that community and I am being negatively impacted by these things. And I need to remind myself that sometimes, like when it comes to having an opinion on issues, I am a part of that community that's being negatively impacted. But it's been years since I've worked in a strip club. And the only reason for that is because I've been blacklisted for most of the clubs. Like, if it weren't for that, I would probably, oh, maybe not now because I'm getting too tired and I can't handle late nights. But when I first moved to Wellington 3 years ago, I tried to apply to work at a strip club, and I was met with a laugh emoji from the owner. And that was when I started realizing, oh shit, I've been blacklisted. Because I threatened a Tamaki Makaurau club with legal action because they were withholding my bond. And then that's what made me go, okay, I guess it's time for me to do full service. So I entered full service, and I've been doing full service ever since. But yeah, it's this weird thing that I think, especially when it comes to stripper stuff, like I'm starting to feel a little bit weird around talking about stripper things because I haven't worked in the clubs in, what is that, 4 years? But with you, I don't know. Oh my God, I don't know. It's so,
Honestly, I have feelings about that, and I get this question also quite a bit in my Ask Me Anything thingies, is like, is my opinion still valid if I haven't done it for a while? And I'm like, honey, if you have long-term experience, fucking A, you will always have a seat at this table to talk about this. It's really easy to start to feel worried that you're like been out of the game for too long. I mean, fuck, like I've been in a bunch of other different kinds of sex work in the last 2 years, but I've only been in the club like, fuck, I don't even know, but like probably can count on my hands, like under 20 times, under 15 times even, I'd say probably. And sometimes I do get in my head about that. But honestly, if you have long-term experience in sex work, and you know, if you have any kind of sex work trauma, that shit is life altering. That is mind altering. It is just like fucking altering as a whole. And so if you understand that and you are informed on the topic, then I think you will always be able to talk. It's the people who start to pipe up who are not informed on the topic and not experienced on the topic that I'm like, what are you doing? Like, your opinion, it's not, like, sorry to be blunt, team, but like your opinion's not valid if you don't have any experience and you like don't have any education isn't the right word, like we said earlier, but like if you're not informed, like shut up. I'm so sorry. It's so frustrating to hear. But like I think like as advocates, like we really do just want to like do this right, and we want to be as educated as possible. You know, like me and Vixen like are little freaks. Like we are both ADHD neurodivergent. This is like a special interest. I know for people who aren't necessarily like aren't actually neurodivergent probably hear like some of the buzzwords that come alongside neurodivergency, like hyperfocus and special interest and stuff, and think that like it's just our cute hobby. But like until you've experienced neurodivergent hyperfocus or special interest in specific stuff, like you can't really understand. This is like something that we're obsessed with. Like obsessed with, we are like constantly educating ourselves. We both read a fuck ton, to the point where Vixen has sent me like lists on lists of books that I should read, and I drive around all the time because I work in different places, so I'm just constantly listening to fucking audiobooks about sex work. So we care so deeply about this, and so I think that's another reason why sometimes we can become like, well, we are super fucking offended by people labeling our opinions and our thoughts and experiences and like expressions of like frustration around this as negative, bullying, perpetuating a divide, perpetuating an issue, when like what we say in our activism and our advocacy online is fact and real life experience. It's not just some shitty thing that we've both thought and gone, yes, I'm going to share that thought. No. This is informed as fuck. So when that gets labeled as this like horrible bullying, negative shit, you know, you're like not holding up the sisterhood, you know, whatever that is so fucking frustrating. And that's all I'll say there. Anyway, next.
no, sorry. I was crying. Sorry.
With laughter or with sadness?
No. With the sorry, it's when you said, oh my God, sorry, I'm crying.
Why are you crying? Tell me.
It was when you said that, though, like when if you experience trauma in a place and it shapes you forever, I just sort of have realized to myself that the reason I talk so much about stripping and sex work stuff is like, it was so traumatizing being bullied by management. It was, sorry, I'm fucking crying. I'm not sorry.
I'm not laughing at you because I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing because I'm like, this is so relatable. Like, and so legit and so real. Like, it is so fucking traumatizing, and then like you add the activism on top of that, and it's just this added layer of like, holy fuck. And then you add like the layers of hate that you get from just being a sex worker, and then you add the layers of hate you get for being an outspoken sex worker or an advocate. And you know, sometimes when someone like turns around and like reassures you and is like, oh no, you're actually like valid, like you're actually not insane and crazy, because people love to label us crazy, like we were talking about in our mental health thing. When someone's like, oh, actually, no, that's not crazy, like I share that experience, and you kind of have that moment of like, oh, I'm not fucking insane. It's like mind blowing. And like, I think this is what, and whether or not we include this, but I think this is what, to everyone listening, has been such a beautiful part of me and Vixen's friendship, is that like, I think we make each other feel a little bit less crazy. Do you think I'm right?
No, absolutely. I'm sorry. Oh my god, sorry. I'm fucking bawling. Like, I think just sometimes I get a lot of imposter syndrome, but I spent 3.5 years working in strip clubs, and I was bullied so viciously, and so and I'm almost 30, and I sometimes think, like, do I just need to let it go and move on with my life? Like, am I letting this thing from my past? But for me, with my autism, and when you have diagnosed PTSD, it feels like it only happened to me yesterday. And I just really am so grateful that you said, when you've been traumatized by a thing, like, it does stay with you. As much as that sucks, I talk about this to this day now, my experiences in the club, because for me, it feels like it only happened yesterday, because I sometimes feel like I mentally froze in the strip club, and I wasn't able to move on with my life because I've never had justice. And so when Fired Up Stilettos formed, I was like, oh my god, this is my chance to get justice. And I just really hope that Fuss one day is able to get all of the things that Fuss is working towards, because I don't want anyone to ever fucking experience what I went through in the strip club at the hands of management. Like, it was hard enough being assaulted by customers, but fuck the shit that management put me through. Sorry, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, man. I just like, I think that for you, it feels like it was just yesterday, and you're feeling this dynamic about it not being just yesterday, and it's still feeling that way. But like, I think something also to remember about us being advocates is that like, for a lot of sex workers, however many out there right now there are, some of them actually did just experience that yesterday, or in the last few weeks, or in the last few months. And so for some people, like, they hear us talking about this stuff, and it's like deeply, closely relatable because it's happening to them right now. And I think that, like, again, like, this is actually a really great example of, like, I would love everyone to listening to this right now to just, like, ask yourselves how that kind of, like, expression of, like, just straight up, like, hurt from that industry, how are you perceiving that right now? Because what that was from Vixen was, like, so fucking real. That is such a big reason why we do this shit. And this is why we get so fucking frustrated when, yeah, people give us their bullshit opinions, or they, you know, try to discredit us and, you know, say things that are just like swerfy, homophobic, laced with problematic bullshit. Because for us, and I'm about to use that little phrase, Vixen, for us, it is literally that deep. What, like, Vixen just pulled her eyes out in the podcast. It's that fucking deep. And unfortunately, like, if you're not in that position, if you haven't got that like lived experience, if you're not informed, yeah, it's not that deep for you. And that's where the problem is if you don't understand, because you don't have that lived experience, you actually don't get to dictate and discredit the feelings of other people just because your opinion differs. And again, like, just some thought that you have that probably serves yourself doesn't actually necessarily count as an opinion, when faced with someone saying that you've caused harm. Like, that's not what that is. And yeah, like, again, like, this is why we get so frustrated, because we're consistently met with like just a refusal to listen and understand and comprehend, and the pushback and the opinions and all of this, and it's like relentless. It's fucking relentless. In the words of Justin Bieber, it's not clocking. It's not clocking to some of you that this is super fucking deep to us. It's, you know, you might have some opinion formed off like what you think and what you feel, but as someone with like an hectically more amount of privilege than a sex worker, like just check your opinions really quick and make sure that you are critically thinking. We'll talk more about critical thinking in a second, but make sure you are critically thinking about if your opinion is actually factual and informed, or if it's self-serving and just makes you feel like you're allowed to do something or potentially getting away with something.
Kia ora. No, I was actually, thank you so much for that. I've stopped crying now. I'm okay. Honestly, that was actually quite cathartic for me. I think I needed that. I'm going to go fucking journal on this when we're done here. But no, kia ora, ngā mihi, everything you said. And something I want to add to that, I wish I'd said this at the fucking start of the episode. I just remembered opinions that people were having that were pissing me off. So when Fired Up Stilettos first formed and was really big in the media, there were a lot of strippers saying that Fired Up Stilettos was lying and over-exaggerating, and in their opinion, the strip club industry is fine and there's no exploitation and whatever. Let me explain something when it comes to management. When it comes to abusive people in general, how abusers operate is that no one is actually, abusers do not have friends. They have people that they strategically pick to be nice to not abuse, so that when the people that they do abuse speak up, those people, those pawns that they've selected, will dismiss them. And for me, when people dismiss the experiences of people that have been abused because it didn't happen to them, you sound fucking stupid to me. And I feel sorry for you, because abusers don't have friends. They have enablers. And they saw you as a fucking easy person to manipulate into masking for them. There are people, like, abusers are really good at being able to sniff people that are easy to manipulate onto their side. And they pick those people, they treat them nice, and then when they abuse the others and the victims eventually speak up, those fucking pawns go, no, like, that never happened to me. And now I am seeing more and more strippers who are still to this day being exploited at management, feeling more emboldened to speak up about it, because they know now that there is a group, Fired Up Stilettos, there to support them. Prior to Fuss forming, we felt so helpless. What do we do? So when people were going around saying, oh, that never happened to me, they're lying, they're over exaggerating, fuck you. Your opinion in that situation is devaluing the very real reality that there are so many strippers, myself included, that have been abused, taken advantage of, exploited by our managers. And just because it doesn't happen to you doesn't mean that it's not happening.
What I will say, a word that I think I was thinking about while you were talking about like the enablers, like the people that they like indoctrinate, the abusers indoctrinate, is like these people are being tokenized. Like, and I see that a lot. I see strippers and sex workers being tokenized by, specifically in my experience, the pole fitness community, and that being, again, like a get out of jail free card of like we have this sex worker on site who is like in support of us, and therefore like everyone else can shut the fuck up because this person like thinks that this is fine. And then like if that person does pipe up to be like, well, you know, everyone else's opinions are wrong, then it's kind of just like, well, fuck. Like, honestly, like, it's really frustrating. It's just, to simplify, and I guess like overarching thoughts on this topic is that if marginalized people are saying to you that they're experiencing harm and it's factual and they have like fucking evidence and are informed and understanding of the ways in which it is harming them, and they're telling you this, you can't disagree with them citing an opinion. That's it. Full stop. Like, you can't cite your own opinion as, well, no. You can maybe talk on personal experience and be like, oh, in my experience, blah, 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 blah. But you can't actually turn around and say, well, actually, I invalidate what you say because of my opinion. That doesn't work. That's not mathing. That's not mathing to me. Yeah.
Kia ora. I completely agree. And we're getting to the end of the episode, but before we do, I want to talk, because you mentioned critical thinking. I think critical thinking skills, I mentioned in the last episode, we are losing them as a society because of online censorship, because of AI generated content, something I genuinely worry about. Critical thinking skills are survival skills. And what critical thinking is, like, I think people hear the word critical and they assume it like inherently means criticizing. We live in a white supremacist patriarchal world that is programming us from birth to have certain opinions on things. And critical thinking skills in a world that we live in are so valuable. When you receive information that society has put in your head, it's really fundamental. It's really important that you learn to peel it back, to think on it and go, why do I think this? Do I actually think this, or have I been told to think this? And why have I been told to think this? Who does this opinion serve and who does it harm? It's this thing where, like, I remember years ago, someone once said to me, like, your first thought is societal conditioning and your response to it is you. So for example, say you're walking down the street and you walk past a woman wearing a crop top and your first thought is like, ooh, what a slut. And then you think to yourself, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that. The first thought was put in your head by misogynistic patriarchal conditioning. The second thought is you. That's the real you going, whoa, wait a minute. Whoa, I can't believe I said that. I don't think that. That's a critical thinking skill. You've just realized a thought popped in your head. You've realized, oh my gosh, wait, what the fuck? You've already asked, wait, why did I think that? That's critical thinking skills. And then you unpack, okay, why did I think that? Well, I've been raised in a world that says that women's bodies are inherently sexual. So if I see a woman wearing a crop top, I assume she's a slutty person, and that's really misogynistic. I hope that makes sense. I think critical thinking skills are life-saving. They're very valuable, and it's something that we as a society are starting to, I genuinely worry about how much people lack media literacy skills, lack critical thinking skills when it comes to forming your thoughts and opinions. I think you should think really critically about them. I think really critically about any opinion I have before I go to share it. And I'd also like to put it out there, again, I will change my opinion when presented with new facts. Do you have any thoughts about critical thinking, Madeline? And then I reckon we'll sign off for the day, because, oh God, what an episode. Fucking hell.
What an episode, team. What an episode. We're fucking on fire today. Critical thinking. Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were like, what's the word, hypothesizing this podcast and trying to kind of talk about it and figure it out a little bit. And like critical thinking was like the main reason behind why we wanted to do the podcast, because we wanted to give insight into the things that we see and we are informed on that maybe the average person that's a part of either one of the communities or a marginalized community that we intersect with might not see. And for those insights that we hope to provide to be that second voice that Vixen is talking about, to be like, oh, like my first voice is my, conditioned, patriarchal, whorephobic, whatever it may be voice. But I've heard this thing from these guys that's challenged that belief. And so now that might be something that pops into my head, and I might now be able to better critically think about some of these things. And it's really hard, like, as a marginalized person, to watch people who aren't as marginalized, or maybe not marginalized at all, completely miss more problematic things because of a lack of critical thinking. Like, because, and this is not to toot our own horns, but I think because me and Vixen have worked really hard, and others around us, a lot of people have worked really hard to build critical thinking skills and to practice them and action them every day, all the time. It is really, like, quite shocking when you can see the complete lack thereof within other people. And things that are blaringly obvious to me in my mind aren't necessarily that way for everyone else because of a lack of critical thinking skills. And, I think that like it is hard to build them, and especially if you don't have lived experience in the industry. But if you have people around you who are in the industry, okay, let's talk about specifically pole fit and sex work. If you have sex workers around you who are perceiving these things that you aren't, it's actually not that hard to listen to them and to take on board what they're saying, and then maybe like shift your perspective a little bit and like perceive things slightly differently. And that is what critical thinking is taking in other people's perspectives and having empathy and translating that in your own mind to inform your behavior slightly differently. And it's not something that you can just like kind of avoid. Like, I'm sure everyone has critical thinking skills in some way. Like, I think a lot of people have critical thinking skills, but some people are actually just quite avoidant of using them when those critical thinking skills don't benefit them. And I think that that's really fucked up, and that you should really check that.
I think, yeah, the most valuable critical thinking skills are when you are thinking critically about something that might not positively impact you. Like we talked about in the allyship episode, how allyship is not about you. The best critical thinking skills come when you are willing to question things that could actually, in your, like, take away from the privileges that you're accustomed to having. I think those are really valuable critical thinking skills. Like, for example, like me being a fucking white-skinned person, like having to really think critically about the white privilege I have, even though I am Māori. I'm a fucking white-skinned Māori. I look like the fucking moon. Like I need to really think critically about the times where it's not the time for me to speak on an issue because it doesn't impact me directly. In fact, this issue positively benefits me. Like I have white privilege because I've got white skin and blue eyes, and people clock me as Pākehā. So it's just the ability to think critically about things that could actually take away from the privileges you're accustomed to having. I think that's real allyship. And yeah, oh my gosh, what a fucking episode.
Incredible vibes. I loved it. It feels like we've been quite unfiltered this time around, which I'm loving.
Girl, I fucking cried. Like, I'm getting really
fucking
comfortable on
A.
this show.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Like that'll be me one day probably, or probably more likely I'll be screaming into the microphone, swearing and such. But yeah, fuck.
We weren't kidding when we said the show is unscripted. Like, oh my God. Okay, no,
Yeah.
I am getting really comfortable on the show. And I'd like to say, like, the reason I know I'm getting more comfortable is because it means so much to me when people message us or come up to me and say that they love the show and they listen and that they find it insightful and they're learning. That means a fuck lot to me. I am so grateful to everyone who listens. You have been listening to Stripped and Unscripted with Vixen Temple and Madeline Rose. Thank you so much again for those of you who have sent us a tip on Buy Us a Coffee. We really can't thank you enough. Aroha nui, tēnā koutou, and we will see you back here next week for Stripped and Unscripted.